Thank you very much, Dave. I just want to say to you that if you ever come to confession, bring your lunch. Because you'll be there for quite a while. I don't know how a garden variety type priest, just an ordinary parish priest, finds himself in the middle of the United States when I should be back home making sure that the collection was taken up tonight at the Mass. And here I am, down here talking to a bunch of drunks. Now, I think it was Naileen. Somebody called me anyway a while ago and said, would you come to, where is it I'm at? In Indiana. And you'd do anything to get her off the phone. She talks incessantly, So anyway, I said yes. And so I promptly put it in my book, and I forgot about it, see? And so about a week ago, I'm looking at my book, and I said, dear God, I've got to be in Indiana. That's where I am, isn't it? Yeah, Indiana on the weekend. So I started to get worried. Then on a Thursday of this past week, this is the last Thursday, I look at my book and I said, oh dear God, I got to take a flight to Indiana tomorrow. And then I got nervous. And right now I'm wishing to God I'd said no. Because when you're nervous and you're worried, it's a bad combination. And it reminded me of an experience I had many years ago when I spoke at one of our penal institutions in Canada. I spoke to the inmates at the Kingston Penitentiary. Now, I'd never been in penitentiary. I should have been, but I hadn't made it. And I went down there, and the warden said, come and have lunch, or whatever it was, and it was awful anyway. And then afterwards, he said, we go to the assembly hall. Now, I started this long trek through a series of corridors, and the first thing I became aware of was they kept locking doors all the time. They weren't too fussy about who came in, but my God, they were fussy about who was going to go out of there, I'll tell you. Well, finally, we arrived in the assembly hall, and I was nervous before, now I'm totally petrified. I'm in front of a whole bunch of prisoners with their grey uniforms on, their numbers, and a very menacing-looking sight indeed. And there was very little I could do about it. They locked the door, And it was one of the lengthiest preambles to a meeting I've ever been through in my entire life. Everybody had something to say. They went out in the hall and got the janitor. He came in and talked for 20 minutes. They finally got around to introducing me as the speaker, and I stepped to the front of the platform, and I had a terrible experience, one that a speaker hopes he would never have in a lifetime. My mind went blank. I couldn't think of a single thing to say. And after what seemed like an eternity, which was only a matter of a few seconds, I'm sure, I'm saying to myself inside, Waters, you've got to get this thing underway. And I hope that I'll never forget that my opening remarks to them was I was glad to see so many of them there, And they've never invited me back. Now, yes. Wherever I go and I'm dressed in my clerics, people invariably ask, what order do you belong to, Father? Well, it so happens that I'm not an order priest. I'm what they call a diocesan priest. I belong to the Diocese of Hamilton. But there are many orders in the church. There's the Dominicans and the Jesuits and all sorts of Redemptorists and all sorts of orders. And then there's a fabulous order that we all are familiar with, and that's the Franciscans. Now, the Franciscans pattern their life after Francis, and they do a lot of good work and charity and so on. And in recent years, the order fell into the hands of some young whippersnappers. And they decided that they should update the order, and they would have a conference on poverty. And in true Franciscan style, they held it at the Waldorf Astoria. And they invited old Bill up from the missions. Bill had the same sandals and the same robe he'd had when he was ordained some 40 years before. And they invited Bill up and, put him into the hotel and gave him access to all the amenities of the hotel. And I thought it was just a little treat for old Bill for being 40 years a priest. And old Bill thought he'd died and gone to heaven. All the nice things, you see, and he'd been in the missions for years. And so this reporter caught up with him after about 4 days, and he said, Father, what do you think of the conference on poverty? My son, he says, if this is the conference on poverty, I can hardly wait for the one on chastity. Yeah. Now, I knew that I was coming to a small, like a conference, and I'm so glad that Al-Anon is here. God, they're beautiful lads. I just love you. I really do. You add so much, because looking at these ugly faces of these guys is bad enough, Now, look at these beautiful ladies. And it reminded me of a story about an elderly couple who had just retired for the night. And there was a thunderous explosion, and the whole house blew up. And they landed 4 blocks away, lying in their bed in the middle of the street. And the old man looked around and the dust was settling, and he realized they were safe, and he looked down at his wife, and she's crying. "Don't cry, dear, don't cry." He says, "We're safe." She said, "That's not why I'm crying." Well, he said, "What in the name of God are you crying for?" "I'm crying because I'm so happy. It's the first time we've been out together in 10 years. My father, God rest him, was a beautiful chanty Irishman. He had no manners at all, and he loved telling Pat and Mike stories. And I heard one the other day that I know my father would have enjoyed very much. It was a story about poor Pat. Now, Pat was an illiterate soul. He could neither read nor write, and he had an awful time making ends meet. And he'd just grab a little job here, a little job there, and just scrape up enough to get by. Lady luck shined on him, didn't it? God, yes. He got a wonderful job cleaning out the vats in the local brewery. Oh, it's the best job he'd ever had in his life. And tragedy struck, and Pat fell in a vat and drowned. Well, they had the wake at the local funeral parlour, and his wife Bridget was there, receiving the guests. Along came one of the neighbours, and Mrs. O'Toole. She said a little prayer in front of the casket, and she called Bridget aside. Bridget, she said, "I want to know, is it true," she said, "that the brewery paid you $500,000 for Pat's death?" And Bridget said, "It's true they did, Mrs. O'Toole." "Mother of God," she said, "that's an awful lot of money for a man who couldn't read nor write." And Bridget said, "And thank God he couldn't swim." Now you've gathered by now that there's something the matter with me, so I'll get on for my reason for being here. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and my name is Peter Waters, and I'm a member of the Oakville group of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's the order of importance as far as I'm concerned, because for many years it was very important who I was and not what I was, and it is only by the grace of God and the example that I found in this fellowship that I've been able to find a way of life that enables me to live one day at a time without the use of alcohol, as befits a human being and as God intended that I should live. Now, my story as an alcoholic is not greatly different than most stories you'll have heard. It has a certain amount of fear and remorse and degradation as we've all experienced it. It differs perhaps in a couple of respects. One is that I was a religious alcoholic, and the other is I was a political alcoholic, and I've always maintained when you put those two together, you end up with a hell of an alcoholic, and that's very true. Now, I want to preface any remarks I have to make to you this evening by referring you to a slogan that we're all familiar with, and that slogan is to keep an open mind. Now, that's a very, very important slogan, and it's going to be very important to you before I'm finished with you, too, because I'm going to say some things that are very disturbing, and I hope that I do, because I've come to learn in my time in this program that the things that have been said at meetings such as this that have stirred me to think have been the most worthwhile things I have acquired. I sincerely believe, my friends, and when we come to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and we get rid of the booze, we end up with a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. And if in my efforts here tonight I can stir someone to do some thinking, then any efforts I've made in coming here will have been very worthwhile. So I exhort you to keep an open mind. Now, I've discovered over the years there's a great deal of difference between an open mind and a vacant mind, so please keep an open mind. Now, I began my remarks by saying that I was a recovered alcoholic. And some people say, "Oh, Waters, you just say that to be controversial." Well, I want you to know, my friends, I don't have to say anything in Alcoholics Anonymous to be controversial. Just show up. Or sometimes not show up. And they'll talk about it for bloody months, they will. I take as my authority for the statement that I made that I'm a recovered alcoholic, a quotation from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, we have a large crowd here, and it's a big hall, and I want to hold this up. This is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have discovered over the years that if you want to hide something from somebody in AA, you put it in the big book. They'll never find it. They think it's a table decoration, goes with the decor of the hall. One day they're walking by, "Oh, God, there's print in there. How did that get in there?" I want to quote to you from the foreword that was written by Bill Wilson in 1939. This is the foreword to the first edition, and I quote, "We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, to show that alcoholics, precisely how we have recovered, is the main purpose of this book. End of quote. Now, when you use language as direct and as positive as those statements are, my friends, it doesn't leave too much room for frigging around. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Oh, not frigging around. No, I'll come back another night and do that, you see. See, I haven't always been a priest. I have a distinct advantage over all of you here. I've been on both sides of the confessional. And I haven't heard anything I haven't done either. I want you to... I was born 69 years ago into an Irish Catholic family. Well, one might say, well, what's that got to do with being an alcoholic? Well, perhaps it's not a qualification, but let me assure you it's not an impediment either. If you're familiar with that kind of a heritage, Mother of God, you've got 2 strikes against you before you even get started, you know. Now, it wasn't an unusual thing that one of the boys in a large Irish Catholic family would go to the church. There were 7 of us. And I was the one who was earmarked for that. And I had no difficulty with that because I love the church very much. But you see, I was born and raised during the Depression days, and we were poor. Now, in those days, you had to pay for a formal education. Nowadays, you can go to school until you're 90, and the government will pay for it. But in those days, you had to have money or rich relatives, and I had neither. And we were very poor. My God, we were poor. We were what you'd call dirt poor. Now, there's nothing wrong with being poor. It's just inconvenient. You know? And so the alternative was to go out into the world to work, earn some money, and go back to school at a later date. And I left school at a very early age and went out into the working world with the idea to make some money. And I just made some discoveries in the working world that I want to share with you. First discovery I made was a thing called money. Now, this was just at the beginning of the war years. I had no idea that there was that much money in the world. My God, there was tons of money. And then I made 2 other discoveries in rapid succession. I discovered girls and booze. And the idea about being a priest went a long way in the back burner after that. For a long time, and I went on a long journey. Now, I knew there was one job in the world I could do that didn't require an academic degree, and that was to be a salesman. Because when the only qualification to be a good salesman is you have to have a lot of the blarney. Now, a fellow said to me the other day, he said, Waters, you didn't kiss the blarney stone, you invented it. And so I went out in the world and I got this job as a salesman. And I learned a few things. I made a ton of money, a great deal of money, and I also learned how to drink. But I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I thought you had to be hard working, hard driving, hard selling, hard drinking to be successful. And I qualified in every one of those counts. So I'm not out on the road too many years. And I'm saying to myself, well, I should be making this money for myself instead of this company I'm working for. So I went back to Oakville. It's a small community of at that time, about 50,000 population. And I went back to Oakville and I established a retail business that would have been very sufficient to have maintained me very comfortably had I looked after it. But I knew that I couldn't continue to drink in the same fashion as I'd been drinking on the road, which was every night of the week. Because if I did that in a small community like Oakville was, I'd create such scandalous situations that it would adversely affect my business. So I began to practice what we here referred to in the program as controlled drinking. Let me assure anyone here tonight that if you're trying it, you're wasting a hell of a lot of good drinking time. It doesn't work. I have tried every known method to man. Psychiatry, religion, medicine, social workers, you name them. I tried them. I remember one time I went to see a psychiatrist. I shopped around till I got the most expensive one. After a great deal of his time and my money, he made a very profound statement. He said, you drink too much. I was 5 years in AA, and I walked into the North Toronto group one night, and who's sitting in the back row? The psychiatrist. And I walked over to him and I said, you drink too much. And he's never spoken to me since. Now, the most prominent method I employed was the pledge system. Now, many young folk here tonight who wouldn't necessarily know what the pledge system is. The pledge system is an old Irish custom for those who had the failing. The wonderful thing about being an Irish Catholic is you're never a drunk. You just have the failing. And I'd go down and see Father and take the pledge. I took so many pledges he ran out of them, you see. And they never lasted any longer than 5 minutes. So long as it would take me to walk from his house to the nearest hotel. And there I'd go to have the last drink I was going to have before I quit for the rest of my life. And it wasn't until I came to this program and you people told me it's not the second, the 12th, the 22nd, or the 32nd drink. It's the first drink that does the damage. And I made a tremendous discovery that I want to share with you. I discovered that it is absolutely humanly impossible to take the second one without having taken the first one first. God, you get awful drunk trying that, you know, eh? This would be the first of another series who've gone for God knows how long. The luck of the Irish has always been with me. I've had many blessings which I've done nothing to deserve. And it's a well-known fact in the Irish way of life. If there's a problem in the home or the parish, you take it to the pastor. God, do I ever know that today? But anyway, my mother, God rest her soul, was a very beautiful, gracious Irish lady who had more faith in her little finger than I'll ever have in a lifetime. And I got myself into a pile of trouble. Oh, it was a terrible mess. And she got on my case. And I knew how to get her off my back because all I ever had to say to her was, I'll go down and see Father, because Father fixed everything. She believed that the parish priest could move mountains. So on this occasion, I hope I'll never forget going down to see Father. I sat in his study with him for 2 hours talking about my drinking. And my final remarks to him, I said, Father, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. Oh, God, Pete, he says, I don't think you are either, he said. I tell you what we'll do, he said, we'll sit down, we'll have a drink and we'll talk about it, you know. My poor mother could never figure out why every time I went to the rectory I came home loaded, you see. And she'd say to me, where have you been? I'd say, down to see Father. She said, you couldn't have been. Look at the shape you're in. I said, you should see him. Well, I hardly need to tell you that as wheelers and dealers, you know, when we're practicing and we just become absolutely insane in the way we wheel and deal. And I'm wheeling and dealing, and I wanted to be successful in the community as a businessman. I wanted to have what they say, a higher profile. Now, when you're drunk, you don't need a higher profile, you see. But so I began to join organizations. I joined everything but the Masonic Lodge and the Orange Order. It was the only two I couldn't qualify for. If there was a dogfight on, the county, a pink tea, a sewing circle, ladies' aid, a quilting party, didn't matter damn what it was, I'd be there. The last year of my drinking, they quit inviting me for fear I'd show up. Now, along about this time, I did something that I know that God will never forgive me for. I went into politics. Now, it's not difficult to become a politician. That's obvious after the last election in this country, anyway. And if you're an alcoholic, you might even get there faster. I don't know. But when you run for public office, there's always perks. Now, I won't tell you how I got elected. I should still be in penitentiary for that. But anyway, that was I got myself elected to public office, and there's always perks that go with the election. And I want to just recall a couple of perks that I enjoyed. One was a particularly dangerous assignment, not for me, but for the citizens of my community. They made me chairman of the police commission. Absolutely nothing wilder than a practicing alcoholic running the police department, you know. You park your car in the middle of the street or on the sidewalk or wherever you fall out of it, and the police would come along and say, for God's sakes, go home. And I'd say, do you know who I am? They were hoping I'd drop dead right there. Now, the second committee, I was chairman of Public Works. The chairman of Public Works should never do any more than cut 2 ribbons and make 2 short speeches. But I ran that department differently. I had the road in front of St. Andrew's Catholic Church paved. I had the trees pruned. I had the lights fixed. I had the snow removed. I had men down there all the time. The poor little Anglican minister over in the corner never got a damn thing done, you see. I hated him. And along about this time, I'm really wheeling and dealing, and I went into party politics. Now, very fortunately for you, you'll be spared any account of that because I don't remember anything about it myself. I was drunk during the entire campaign, made a jackass of myself on every platform in the county. I would recall an incident to illustrate the talk we hear in the program about the morning drink. I always get a great charge out of these people who put the emphasis on the morning drink. Who ever heard tell of an alcoholic looking at his watch to find out what time it was he was drinking? He might be interested in what year it is, but not what time it is, you see. I'm in the north end of the riding on a Friday night, big rally, very successful, everything went well. And after the rally, we had the usual party, and I managed to get drunk. And one of my campaign workers drove me home to my mother's home where I was living in Oakville during the night sometime. Now, when I woke up in the morning, I was still drunk, and I had on my desk an invitation to attend as a platform guest the dedication service of our Dominion Public Building, which was under construction at that time. My mother tried to persuade me not to go there, and I got very indignant with her and told her she didn't know what she was talking about. And I presented myself there in the presence of many of our citizens and a lot of brass from the Capitol. And I arrived at the platform, presented my credentials, and the aide said, "Yes, Mr. Waters, we have a seat for you." And he escorted me onto the platform, right down to the end of the platform, right next to my political opponent. It was about the middle of the campaign. The ceremonies got underway. It was a beautiful June morning, and the mayor was addressing the crowd. And I fell off the platform, you see. And they ran over and said, "What happened?" I said, "He shoved me off." I said, "That's what happened." Of course, the truth of the matter was that I drank the best part of a bottle of scotch before I went there that morning, and by that time I saw two platforms and got on the wrong one. I guess that's it. Now, this would qualify one for saying he had some problems with alcohol. Here's a young man with very high ideals, wanting to be a priest, good family, and now I'm lying in the gutter. Now, if there's anyone here tonight who doesn't think that that can't happen to you, just keep on drinking. That's where you'll end up, because it has no respect for your color, your creed, your bank account, your social standing, or anything else. I lost my right to hold public office. I lost my business. I lost my right to drive an automobile. I lost my right to live at home. And then I did what I've since been told that all alcoholics have to do in our part of the country. I went to Toronto. And I lived on Skid Row for a number of years, bumming nickels and dimes and living in the alleyways and eating at the missions. And I didn't like it. And out of necessity, I had to get a job. I was unemployable. And I got a job sweeping floors for a local hardware wholesaler in downtown Toronto at $17.50 a week. And I'll always remember, I was so excited about it. I called my mother in Oakville, which was a distance of about 20 miles away, and I asked her if I could come home. And like all good mothers, she said, "You can always come home as long as you behave yourself." I can remember as if it were last night, sitting in the living room across from my mother and saying to her how I'd got this tremendous job and how I would be president of this company in no time. Now, she had heard that song before. And she said to me, "Why don't you get a ride back and forth from Oakville to Toronto, it's a distance of about 20 miles, with one of our many commuters?" A lot of commuters go back and forth every day. And she said, "Hang on to that little job and things will get better." Little did I know she was praying. I had no alternative, so I took her advice, and I came across a chap whose family name I knew, but I didn't know him. Now, he'd had a bad reputation in our community. He was all mixed up with the law. And somewhere along the way, he cleaned up his act, and he joined a mysterious outfit called Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I could have cared less if he joined the Ku Klux Klan. All I wanted from this bird was a ride back and forth from Oakville to Toronto. He's a wonderful man, a man that I love, admire, and respect. His name is Don Carlton of the White Oaks Group in Oakville, and he's a Protestant Englishman, and how the hell he got in the act, I don't know. But anyway, I arranged with Don to pick me up in front of my house in the morning and drop me off downtown Toronto, and the reverse at night. Now, I want to say to the young fellows that are here tonight, you know, these old birds in AA have a nasty habit, and very nasty habit, of throwing hints at you if they think you're a candidate, you see. And I was getting lots of hints, but I wasn't a candidate. One night I didn't show up for my ride. Why didn't I show up for my ride? Well, very simple. It was payday. I had $17.50. And I was picked up later that night sitting outside of a prominent eating place in downtown Toronto with all their silverware in my pockets, and I spent the night in jail. And I got out the following morning through the benevolence of the Salvation Army. And oh, dear God, I was sick. I hadn't been home the night before. I was filled with fear and all the things we know so well. I met Don that night at the designated spot, and we're driving out of Toronto. Now, as I look back on that period of my life, I realized that we suffer from a double-barrel disease. The second half of this disease, my friend, is a thing called pride. I had a lion's share of it from the very beginning. Because I'm riding out of the city with this man, and I'm just shaken inside. I'm in terrible shape. And I wait till we get about 5 miles out of the city, and I turned to him and I said, "I understand you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous." And he said, "Yes, I am." And what do you think I said to him? I said, "You know, I'm very social service minded. I'd like to go to one of those things sometime. Maybe I could help somebody, you know." Oh, God, I want to vomit every time I think of that, And he turned to me and said, yeah, there's a meeting tonight. I said, I don't want it that fast, I hope I'll never forget to be grateful for the fact that he took me to my first meeting that night in the North Toronto group. Now, anyone in this room who has experienced initial sobriety knows full well, positively full well, that words are totally inadequate to describe the tremendous feeling that one gets when they have been 4 days sober. 5 days sober, 1 week sober. My God, miracles abound. And I'm going back and forth with this man, and we're going to meetings, and didn't I get offered another job? I know I desperately needed it because my finances were in terrible shape. I'll tell you very quickly what this job was. I was to become a professional fundraiser for the Catholic Church. Now, I damn near put them out of business, and that's almost impossible with the Catholic Church. After a short training period, I was sent out to Western Canada to run a financial campaign to raise $5.5 million to build a cathedral in Edmonton. I got off the plane in Edmonton, and my nerves were bad. All alcoholics have bad nerves. Most of the ones I've ever met have a hell of a nerve, And besides all that stuff they told me back in Oakville about the first drink, go to meet, that was for the uninitiated. I knew better than that. So I found out where all the bars were the first night, in case I missed any, I went back the second, third, fourth, and fifth night. And how in the name of God I got any work done, I don't know. But I can recall very vividly laying in a third-rate hotel room in downtown Edmonton, coming out of a 4 or 5 day drunken stupor, and saying to myself, Waters, why can't you stay sober? I couldn't stay sober because I couldn't be honest. Honesty is a basic requirement to our recovery. My pattern would be I'd be in one of these assignments for 3 or 4 weeks, and I'd come home for a few days before going out on another. And when I'd be home, I'd get together with my sponsor. And he'd say, how are you doing? I'd say, just great. Getting lots of meetings. Hadn't been to one since I'd left. And he'd say, do you remember Charlie was around the last time you were here? I remember Charlie real well. Well, he said he's having a hell of a time making the program. And I'd have the gall to stand in front of this wonderful man and say to him, isn't it too bad he can't latch onto this thing the way I am, Well, God works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform, because one time I was home from one of these trips. I was met in Oakville by 2 very high-profile entrepreneurs from the city of Toronto, and they offered me an incredible job, a once-in-a-lifetime job. I was to become the general manager of a very large retail operation in the town of Oakville. The local boy makes good. I had to go out and buy a new suit. All the buttons I had on popped off the one. And I became ensconced, the big paneled office, the leather chair, the oak desk. I had 180 employees, and I'm just a wheeling and a dealing. After about 7 days, I looked across my desk, and there sat my sponsor. Now, I don't know whether he'd been there all long or not, but there he was, you see. And he looked at me and says, you're going to get drunk. I looked at him as if he had 7 heads. What are you talking about? I said, I'll be back to AA when I have time. Oh, dear God, that's a dangerous statement. Wasn't many days thereafter that I got in my car and went down Kerr Street to the liquor store, picked up the bottle, proceeded into the West End of Toronto, stopped at a pay booth, called a young lady whom I'd taken out on a few previous occasions. And the only reason I called her, I knew she drank. And I suggested we have dinner, and she thought it was a grand idea. I said, how about a couple of cocktails before dinner? She thought it was an even better idea. So I went over to her office, picked her up, went right over to mid-down Toronto, and we got right into it where there's lots of booze. And by midnight, she didn't know her name, and I didn't know mine, and we hadn't eaten either. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm taking her home to the East End of Toronto, and I took my eyes off the road for just a moment, and the next thing I knew, I'm all tangled out in one of those streetcars that got run around down there. Blood and guts all over the place. It was a terrible, terrible accident. The only recollection I have of the accident is the arresting officer, who has since become a good friend of mine, a good friend of this fellowship. He had one of the broadest English accents I've ever listened to in my life, and I became very belligerent. And I woke up the following morning in the city jail called the Don Jail. Now, it may sound strange to you for me to say that I'm grateful to God that he saw fit to send me there, but indeed I am. Here was the wheeler and dealer, the man of great influence in the bottom end of Don Jail. Now, when you're down there, you don't influence anybody at all. You can rattle the door all day long, and they won't pay a damn bit of attention to you. I can tell some of you have been there by the way you're looking. And, when you wake up in the morning, you're not sure where you are, and the Venetian blinds are going this way. You know you're in jail. And oh, dear God, I was sick. Oh, Mother of God. I'd been sick before, but this was the mother of them all. I had a hangover you could take out and have a look at. Do you ever have one of those? And I did something that I hadn't done for years. I knelt down in that cell and I asked God, in the only way I knew how, if he'd relieve me of the obsession to drink, in order that I might be of some use to humanity and some use to myself. Tonight, in all sincerity and all gratitude, but most wonderful of all, in all honesty, I can stand here and tell you that that was on January 31st, 1961, and I've not had a drink of alcohol in any form since that time. On the occasion of my 35th anniversary in AA, we had a little party, and about 600 people showed up for this party. And one of the old-timers came over to me that night, and he said, "Waters, you're so dry, you're a fire hazard." Well, it was a long journey back. Oh, dear God, it was a long journey back. First year I was back in AA, I went to 345 meetings. The only reason I didn't go to the other 20 was I was hospitalized. Now, in those days, AA was quite a bit different than it is today. So, I get a bit concerned about some of the things I see in AA today. But in those days, there was no detox centers, no halfway houses, no treatment centers, and a hospital wouldn't touch you, and the doctors wouldn't touch you. And so you either went to AA and hoped you could stay sober with the grace of God, or you went out and you died. Now, in those days, in our area, you were not allowed into AA unless you had 2 sponsors. So I had one, and I came to realize that the reason I had 2 sponsors is they went to every meeting with me, one on this side and one on that side, so that no matter which way I ran, they'd catch you. And you did what you were told. Now, there was no questioning about this at all. No question about this at all. You did what you were told to do. You swept the floor, you washed the dishes, you set up the meeting, you did what you're told. My sponsor told me then, and he tells me today, that the only excuse he will accept for missing a group meeting is a death in the family, and it must be my own, And so I went to many, many meetings. Now, I want to, at this point, digress for a moment and tell you 2 things that happened to me in sobriety. And I'm going to do it this way. I went back into the business world, and I worked very hard, and I put together a little business that grew into a giant. It grew into an enormous-sized business. I had plants across Canada and many millions of dollars of sales. And it was a publishing business. And this business was flourishing. And when I began my recovery, there was a little man who befriended me, who is dead now, God rest him. He had many years of sobriety. And he gave me a piece of literature called The Hound of Heaven. The Hound of Heaven, written by Francis Thompson, a drug addict and an alcoholic who recovered. Now, I identified with the Hound of Heaven very strongly. As a matter of fact, the Hound of Heaven became my mythical friend. And I want to say to you people, if you don't have a mythical friend, I beg you not to go another day without one. Everybody should have a mythical friend. Have you ever been driving along the expressway and you come side by side with another car and the fellow's talking up a storm and there's nobody in the car but himself? Well, he's talking to his mythical friend. My mythical friend would come and sit on this shoulder and he'd whisper into this ear, "Waters, what are you going to do with your life?" What do you mean, what am I going to do with my life? I'm employing people. I'm on the parish council. I'm on the school board. I'm doing good things. I'm going to AA and I'm helping drunks. What more do you want? He said, "I want more." I said, "Get lost." Away he'd go and bother somebody else, and I'd make some more money. And in those days, I was in the habit of going to Florida in the wintertime for a little holiday in January, February. And in 1978, I had the greatest financial year of my life that I will ever have, ever did have, or ever will have. And I had a ton of money. And I said, I'm going to Florida for a month, and I'm not going to take that damn Hound of Heaven with me, because no matter where I went, it always spoiled everything. Now, some of you have been to Florida in the wintertime, and you leave the cold behind, and will say that you arrive in Miami, and you hurry through the terminal to get outside to feel that beautiful warm air that envelops you. You think you've died and gone to heaven. And I ran through the terminal when I got in there, and I got both feet outside the terminal, and I made a terrible, horrible, awful discovery. I discovered discovered that the Hound of Heaven had taken an earlier flight. And I had the worst holiday I've ever had in my life. I'm walking up and down the beach talking to myself. It's a wonder they didn't put me away in a rubber room somewhere, And I knew what the Hound of Heaven wanted. But you see, there were two solid reasons why I could not respond to the Hound of Heaven. One was I was too old by this time, and secondly, I was making too much money. But I knew that I had to get the monkey off my back, so I cut my holiday short, and I flew home. And I went to my home in Oakville, and I picked up the phone, and I called the late Bishop Redding, the Bishop of Hamilton, God rest his soul. And I asked him if I could come and see him, because I knew he would turn me down. And I had a very simple approach to the bishop. I went over to the bishop, and I said, Your Excellency, are you taking any old men these days? And he had a very, very simple answer. He said, Present the body warm, and I'll show you, And the next thing I knew, he had made it possible for me to be accepted for studies for the priesthood at a place called Pope John 23rd Seminary in Boston, Massachusetts. I arrived at Pope John 23rd Seminary on my 50th birthday. And they said, you have to study philosophy and theology. Hell, I couldn't even spell it, never mind study it. And there for 4 years, and they sent me home. They ordained me to the priesthood for the Diocese of Hamilton. Now, I love being a priest. I think it's the most marvelous thing in the whole world. And I'm a good authority on that because I've done everything else, you see. And my first assignment was with a very learned man, Father Kieran Kennedy in Hamilton, and I was with him for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, the bishop called me in. He said, the fathers that time of the year were making appointments, and he said, I'd like you to go to a little place called Cambridge. And I thought, what in the name of God did I ever do to deserve that? That's the end of the world. And but I have a vow of obedience, so I said I'd go. Little did I know I was about to begin 3 of the greatest years of my life with 2 of the most wonderful men, Father Leonard Strohmeyer and Father Vincent Shea, the late Father Vincent Shea. At the end of 3 years, the 5th year of my ordination, the present bishop, Bishop Tonis, called me in, and he said, Father, it's that time of the year we're making appointments, and I'd like to make you a pastor. And I thought, oh, that's wonderful, but here comes Tobermory. That's the furthest point north you can go. And so he said, I'd like you to go to St. Teresa's in Kitchener. And I knew that it was a plum. And I always remember what he said to me on my way out of his office. It's a nice, quiet little parish, Father. Well, it was till I got there, you see. And now it was a very, very busy parish. I had 1,800 families, and I was all alone. I had no assistant. I had 160 baptisms a year, 50 weddings, and 50 funerals. And they were different people, of course. And at the end of 7 years, I damn near killed myself, you see. And I asked the bishop if I could get some help, and because my health was breaking down. So he sent me to a wonderful, wonderful place in Minnesota called Guest House. And I went to Guest House for 3 months rest. And when I came back, of course, he gave me a much smaller parish in a little place called Rockwood. And that's where I presently am with a parish church and 2 mission churches. And it's wonderful, and I love it very, very much. Now, this brings up a point that I want to share with you at this point. It seems to me that in Alcoholics Anonymous, we spend an extraordinary amount of time developing rumors. There is no other organization in the world that will fabricate and produce rumors of the kind that alcoholics do. The rumors that started when I had a breakdown and I was on my way to Minnesota the first rumor was that I had got drunk. Well, of course, that was not true. Well, the second rumor, now this is a classic. This is a classic, and I want you to listen to this. This is a classic. Nowhere else could it happen than in Alcoholics Anonymous. The second rumor was that I had run away with a nun. I want to tell you, my friends, if I'm going to run away with somebody, it won't be a nun. Except you, Ruth. I'll go. I want to go back to the early days of my sobriety. I'd been sober perhaps a couple of years when one of the greatest privileges of my life was to occur. I was to be introduced to Bill, and I came to know him, and I was privileged to spend a considerable number of years up until the time of his death being closely associated with him. And it was through his encouragement that I became involved in the fellowship, very deeply involved in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. There were many others that encouraged me as well, but I always remember Bill's encouragement. I became a delegate to the Panel 17, to the General Service Conference. I became your trustee to the General Service Board, and eventually chairman of AA World Services. And Bill shared with me among others, many others, and I don't want to just emphasize it was Bill, but there are many others. We walk on the backs of giants. We walk on the backs of giants. There's no question in the world about that. And Bill shared with me many, many insights. And I would be remiss if I came all the way to Indianapolis, Indiana, and didn't share those insights with you. And I'm not going to keep you long, but I would be remiss if I didn't do this. And so I'm going to ask for your indulgence for a few minutes. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to is that we're going to take a little journey through the steps. Now, I don't want you to get alarmed. We're not going to spend a lot of time. But the reason I want to establish it as a journey is because any journey, no matter what its duration or its destination may be, of necessity, always begins with the first step. And that's exactly where I'll begin our journey tonight. Now, we have a lot of learned people, profound people in the fellowship who would tell you that the first step is the most important step of the program. Now, I have no earthly idea whether that's true or not, and I have no intentions of arguing about it. But there is one thing I am absolutely certain of about the first step. I couldn't be more sure about the first step. It's in the right place. See, they didn't put it anywhere else. Wilson knew there was going to be a kook like me or several like me coming down the pike someday, and he said, let's put numbers on it. He'll screw it up. And he put one beside that one. It says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Our lives had become unmanageable. What an incredible step. Now, I had no difficulty with that unmanageability stuff. Oh, God, you'd have to be insane to deny that. You know, you're standing in a court of law trying to impress the judge, and you have a tie on and no shirt, you know. And my mother's in the courtroom with me. Oh, God. But this powerless stuff. Oh, maybe when I was drinking I was powerless. But by God, when I'm sober, I'm not powerless. No, I went on that tirade for quite a long time. And it didn't work. And then one day, I discovered a definition of powerlessness that I want to share with you. I think I would be safe in saying to all alcoholics here tonight that there has been a time in our past when we were drinking that things were so despairing that we decided to hell with it, we'll end it all. We'll end it all. So you find a 20-story building. You get on the roof. You're going to jump. Got the picture now? You run and you jump. And you're 20 feet out from the building. You haven't hit the sidewalk. You can't get back on the roof. You have both feet firmly planted in midair. What do you suppose you should do? Well, I don't know about you, but I would go with lightning speed to the second step. Because otherwise you'll splatter all over the bloody sidewalk. How many times has he let you down ever so gently? Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Didn't say he would. Didn't say he would. Eh? Oh, the step is incredible. Came to believe. We came and then we came to. You remember coming to? I remember coming to in some places I'd just as soon forget I was ever in the first place, you see. And then we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Not God. Not God. Oh, now, just a minute, Waters. You're getting way off base here. Right? A power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, not God. Well, then, how do you figure that out? Well, you see, the power comes from God. For me, anyway. It comes from God. But he gives me that power unconditionally. In all the quantity that I need. Every day, he gives me power. What have you done with the power that he gave you today? What have you done with that? You see, what you pray for. A friend of mine was in my office not long ago. He was in terrible, terrible shape. He prayed for his wife and his girlfriend. They both came back at the same time. Many years ago, an ordained minister by the name of Jimmy Jones prayed hard for some of that power. Got a ton of it. Took 1,000 people to Guyana, had a Kool-Aid party, and killed them all. A few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, a man by the name of David Koresh took 88 people into a compound in Texas, shot them and burned them. prayed to the same God as you and I pray to. What have you done with the power that he's given you? What have you done with it? He gives it to you unconditionally. That's what that says right here. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I've seen people misuse that power. I've seen families destroyed because of the misuse of that power. I've seen lives destroyed because of the misuse of that power. Question tonight is, what have you done with the power? 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Not the control of God, the care of God. And this step is an incredible step. You should hear the weeping and wailing they do on this step is almost unbelievable. You should listen to them. Look at what you've done to me. You brought me to this wonderful outfit, and now you want me to do the impossible. You want me to make a decision. Did you ever meet an alcoholic who was foreign to making decisions? I made so many decisions, I put myself out of business 3 times before I got here. But it says here, we turn our will and our lives. Now, our will, I don't know what a will is, whether it's bigger than a breadbasket, tall, fat, thin, short, black, blue, or white. But it says, we turn my life. That's me. I like me. As a matter of fact, I think I'm a hell of a fine fella. Now, if you can't handle that, that's your problem, not mine. I learned that in Al-Anon. They're the most wonderful people in the whole world. They make us look like romper room, you know. Oh, yeah. Turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand him. A lot of people get all messed up about the God business. Well, I'm here tonight as a Roman Catholic priest to tell you that God has no religion. God has no religion. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with him. You can't change the fact any more than you can change the fact that your biological father is your biological father and God is your spiritual father, and you can't change it, and so quit trying. Accept it. Everybody running around looking for God, and he's not lost. Poor Protestant ministers going out to Toronto, to New York for a speaking engagement. And everything that could go wrong went wrong for the poor man. He arrived in LaGuardia, and in LaGuardia, New York, all the policemen and all the taxi drivers are Irish Catholics. It's a throwback to the old Depression days. And he ran out of the airport in his bag, and he got one of these mad fool taxi drivers, and he said, I want you to take me to Christ Church right away. And don't spare the horses. With this mad fool of a taxi driver took off, and he went through backyards, lawns, fences, perambulators, old ladies in verandas and everything else, and he pulled up in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral. And the minister looked out and said, that's not Christ Church. Well, he said, if he's not there, he's out of town today. He said. And then 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And everybody gets uptight and says, oh, my God, he's going to talk about his sex life. Some cases would be rather interesting. Most of them would be very short. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It doesn't say in there, tell about your sex life. The word moral means the total person, the physical, mental, spiritual person. That's a moral person. What's Bill telling us? He's saying you take the steps physically, mentally, and spiritually. And if you do anything less than that, you're shortchanging yourself. But the key word in that step for me is the word inventory. If I was asked to take an inventory of this room, the first thing I do is lock all the doors, and then I take stock of what is in the room. Not what used to be in it, or what's going to be in it, but what's in it now. This is a now program. Oh, it may be necessary for me to look to the past to see what I did back there that made me become what I am now. But I beg you not to wallow in that stuff. Get rid of it. Made you drunk before, it'll make you drunk again. And then we go to step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, not our inventory. That's what it says right here in the book. The exact nature of our wrongs. Do you know what the exact nature of your wrongs are? Well, I'm not going to be bold enough to tell you, but I'll tell you about some of mine. The first one I'm going to tell you about, I know you won't identify with it, but I need to mention it anyway. I know that you never indulge in it at all, and that is that I am the world's greatest controller. Now, I know nobody ever does that. I control everything. Then I have another one. It is called repressed anger. I hate people I don't even know. That guy in front of me in the car. Never saw him before in my life. The air's blue in my car. Right? Then I have another one. Overdeveloped sense of responsibility. Don't worry about a thing. I'll take care of everything. Don't worry. I'll look after everything. I take care of everything. Nothing ever gets done, but I take care of everything. Then I have another one. It is called repressed sexuality. Oh, Father, don't talk about that in AA. You're damn right you talk about it in AA. Just because I'm on a diet doesn't mean to say I can't look at the menu. When I was in elementary school, I was taught by the nuns. Now, some of those ladies are the greatest ladies in the whole world, and some of them are as flaky as hell. One old nun used to say, now, if you have a bad thought, close your eyes and it'll go away. I used to close my eyes and it got better. Now, I'm going to say something that's not going to make me very popular, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you young fellas here tonight came here looking for a date, get the hell out. This is not what this is about. They're still in the same bars as you drank in the last place you were there. And go there. Don't find them here. And if you girls came here looking for a guy, you're not too bright. They didn't get here because they were Mr. Wonderful, you know. I'm going to spare you a lot of time, and I'm going to go down here, and I won't go through all of these, but anyway, I would like to jump right down to step 9. May direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. There's a thing that happens in Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm rather ashamed of, and I hope the outside world never finds out about it. It's called gossip. Gossip. Terrible. Gossip in Alcoholics Anonymous is scandalous. Scandalous. I want to tell you about an example. There was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, called himself a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He wrote my bishop, Dear Bishop, do you know that you have a priest in your diocese by the name of Peter Waters? He's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he speaks a lot at meetings, and he's given to outrageous profanity. He says such terrible things as, God damn it. And the bishop wrote him back and said, I'm glad he's cleaned it up. My friends, if you cannot say something caring, compassionate, and loving about your fellow members of Alcoholics Anonymous, then keep your mouth shut. How many people have we sent to an alcoholic grave because we talked? Dreadful. I beg you not to do that. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. What a magnificent step! We say in our program that our prayers are talking to God and our meditation is listening to God. Doesn't that sound beautiful? But unfortunately, my friends, it's flawed. Why do I say it's flawed? It's because this is what happens. We pray and we pray and we pray and we storm the gates of heaven, and God hasn't got a chance to get a word in edgewise. It would never surprise me, my friends, if one day God didn't look over the wall of heaven and look down on us and say, shut up! I want to tell you something. God speaks to me through His creation of people, places, and things. I'm so old now that I have great nieces and great nephews. And I want to tell you about 2 of them. Phoebe Ann is 5.5. She now has a brother called Alex. He's just about 2. Their mother comes to do some work for me every week. She brings the children. She comes for 2 hours, and I have to go to bed for 4. Alex is just beginning to catch words now, and he has trouble saying Peter, so he calls me Al. It's okay, it's wonderful. I want to tell you about Phoebe Ann. Phoebe Ann is the greatest creation that God ever made. She thinks her Uncle Peter is the greatest guy in the whole world, and I agree with her. She's an active little girl, and she comes into the house, and the first thing she says is, "Let's go for a walk." And we walk around the block, and it takes us 1 hour. 1 hour. And I'll tell you why. Phoebe Ann's a very active little girl, and she reaches down and she picks up a dandelion. Have you ever looked at a dandelion? They're absolutely beautiful when Phoebe Ann tells you about them. We walk along a little further, and right by the side of the sidewalk, there's a whole lot of colored stones that I've been walking by for 5 years and paid no attention to. We have to stop. She counts the stones and tells me the colors. Wow. Then we go along a little further, and lo and behold, right there is an anthill. Have you ever looked at an anthill? They're fascinating. We have to spend a lot of time at the anthill. Why? Because we have to make sure that the ants are going down, the same ones are coming back up, you know. Otherwise, they're cheating. And when I get home and I sit at my desk, I'm reminded of what the Master said. We have to become as little children. When you look at the world through the eyes of a little 5.5-year-old girl, all those things you thought were so important aren't important at all. Not one bit. The only thing that is important is the love of one another. He didn't say, "I suggest you love one another." He didn't say it was an option. He said, "I command you to love one another." Tough lines. We in Alcoholics Anonymous are singularly blessed because we have been called not only to love the lovable, but to love the unlovable. Take yourself back to the day before you came to Alcoholics Anonymous. How lovable were you? What happened? Tonight we sit in an auditorium that's filled with love, filled with just beautiful love. How did that happen? How did that happen? Do you suppose he made it possible one to another? I think he did. I think he said, "Go out and love one another as I have loved you." He showed us his love. Then he said, "Now I want you to go out and do the same thing." Do the same thing, you know? I get a lot of old drunks who follow me around all the time. One of them showed up at the rectory not long ago. "Father, I'm so glad to see you. I didn't know where you were." Of course he knew where I was. That's why he was at the door, you know? Yeah, he said, "I need $5. I said, "What do you want $5 for?" He said, "I want to go to Halifax." I said, what do you want to go to Halifax for? He said, "I'm going down to find God." I said, "You're wasting your time. God hasn't been to Halifax for years, you know." Most God-forsaken place I'd ever been in my life was Halifax, you know. But I gave him the $5 anyway. Now, before I close, and I am about to close, I want to say 2 or 3 things. I want to pay tribute to the most beautiful people I know in the entire world. And I'm talking about the members of Al-Anon. And I mean that very sincerely. I think you're the greatest. You are God's gift to me anyway. You have been great. I could not live a day and do the work that I'm required to do without the assistance of Al-Anon in my life. Oh, God, you're wonderful. It is my fervent prayer that you will walk side by side with the great fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous as long as God wishes. There's a phenomenon that takes place in AA that I pray to God that the outside world will never hear about. It appears to me we come to Alcoholics Anonymous and we sober up and then we tighten up. And if your perceptions are telling you that I'm going to talk about money, they're very accurate. I spent 4 years in a seminary learning how to do this. This will be the Catholic part of the meeting from here on in. You come into Alcoholics Anonymous, you occupy a chair. You drink 6 cups of coffee, eat 4 donuts, and put 25 cents on the plate. At that point, we've lost money on you. I challenge my fellow members of Alcoholics Anonymous in this hall tonight that at your next meeting, when the plate goes by, ask yourself a question. How much is my sobriety worth? And then you respond accordingly. Ouch. Some people say, oh, you give until it hurts. You do no such thing. You give until it feels good. That's just a little bit further. God forbid that I should ever embarrass anybody that doesn't have any money. If the plate comes by and you don't have any money and you need some, take some. But if you've got it, we want it. I gave this talk one time to a very large audience. There were 2,000 people, and there were 4 ministers, and they all came up and asked me to join their church right away. I have gained a reputation in AA giving away big books. And because I firmly believe so much in the big book. I just think the big book is the greatest legacy we have. It's built. It's built. And we should treasure it with all our might and all our hearts. And I've gained a reputation of giving away big books. And I'm going to give away a big book tonight. The person who's going to receive it doesn't know they're going to receive it. There are conditions attached. The condition is that if you have a big book, you must go out immediately and call on a fresh drunk. Don't wait for them to call. Eddie didn't wait for Wilson to call. He went and saw him. When was the last time you called on a fresh drunk? When was the last time you went out? Don't let the detoxes and the treatment centers do it. You do it. That's how we keep what we've got. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose it. It involves a thing that's very foreign to our society. It's called a sacrifice. The grace of God comes to us through prayer, sacrament, and sacrifice. And if we stop making that sacrifice, we'll lose it, my friends. We'll lose His great gift to us. If this person doesn't have a big book, I want this book to do for them what it has done for me. Will Guy come up and get a big copy of the big book, Guy? He's coming up, going to be a year sober in July. And I think that's fantastic. Fantastic. Just think of that now. Just think a year sober in July. Oh, God, isn't it great? Hey? That's great. Now, they tell us in AA that when you give away stuff like that, you shouldn't do that. So when you're wrong, you're promptly admitted. So I've done that now. And I think you're wonderful. I really love you very much. I really do, honest to God. You're just so tremendous. I come to one of these things and I'm just a totally different person because you do it. You do it. Did you listen to our beauties this afternoon? Dear God. I was ready to take a plane home right after she spoke. I said, dear God, I just want to savor that beautiful message. She told us where we came from. Eh? Let's never, ever forget that. Let's never forget it. Anyone who doesn't read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous through and over should not go around calling themselves members of Alcoholics Anonymous. They should not call themselves members of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is our legacy, my friends. This is what God has given to us through Bill Wilson. And if we lose it, oh, God help us. God help us. God be merciful to us, because we will have offended Him so badly. We will have given away the greatest gift that He has seen fit to bestow upon us. Oh, it is so wonderful. I'm more enthused about Alcoholics Anonymous today than I ever was before in my life. After 36 years, and I know that as long as I keep going to meetings, as long as I keep giving it away, as long as I keep the big book foremost on my daily schedule, then I will continue to be happy. because that's what it's about. 'Twas battered and scarred, and the auctioneer scarcely thought it worth his while to waste his time on the old violin, but he held it up with a smile. "What am I bidding, good people?" he cried. "Who'll start the bidding for me? $1, now $2, and who'll make it $3? $3 once, $3 twice, and going for $3, but no." From the room far back, a gray-haired man came forward and picked up the bow, and wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening up the strings, he played a melody pure and sweet as the angel sings. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What am I bid for the old violin?" And he held it up with the bow. $1,000, and who'll make it 2? 2,000, and who'll make it 3? 3,000 once, 3,000 twice, and going and gone, said he. The people cheered, but some of them cried, "We don't quite understand. What changed its worth?" Swift came the reply, "The touch of the master's hand." And many a man with life out of tune and battered and torn with sin is auctioned cheap to a thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He's going once, he's going twice, he's almost gone. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of a soul and the change that's wrought by the touch of the master's hand. God bless you.